We are live. As of last month, we are now broadcasting live. We have some audio issues here and there. So when you are speaking, please speak directly into the microphone so the people watching at home can hear you. They can see you fine, but if you step off to the side to look away, they can't hear you. So please make sure you talk straight into the microphone. Thank you. Are we ready? Is it 6:30? Okay, notice is hereby given that the Lago Vista City Council is holding a regular meeting on Thursday, May 3rd, 2018, beginning at 6:30 p.m. in the City Council chambers at City Hall, 5803 Thunderbird, Lago Vista, Texas, as prescribed by VTCA Government Code, Section 551.041, to consider the following agenda items. Items do not have to be taken in the same order as shown in the meeting notice. Robin, please note that we have four of our 6 council members here. Suzanne and David is not with us tonight. We have our city manager, Josh Ray, our police chief, Danny Smith, with us, yourself, our attorney, Dottie Palumbo, IT, Dave Street, Eric Belay back there, our engineer, Roy Jambor, Development Services, and I'm not missing anybody.
Chris.
Oh, and Chris. You snuck in on me, man. All right, if you would please join me in Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, y'all sat down, y'all can stay sit down, but I'm gonna stand up. I didn't catch y'all before y'all sat down, but today is our National Day of Prayer, and I'm not gonna lead us in a prayer, but I'm gonna ask y'all to just take about 30 seconds or so and just have a moment of silence. Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
All right. First thing on our agenda is citizen comments. In accordance to the Open Meetings Act, council is prohibited from acting or discussing other than factual responses to specific questions. Any items not on the agenda. Okay, first of all, I have Mr. Randy Clark. Randy is with Cap Metro, and yes, Cap Metro is on our agenda. However, he has to attend something else, so he will be leaving. Somebody else will be giving the presentation. So I am granting him 3 minutes to introduce himself.
Excellent. Good evening, and thank you, Mayor. I'll try not to take a full 3 minutes on you. I know you had a packed agenda, and yes, Sam Sargent from our staff will be here to discuss the agenda item. So I'm Randy Clark. I'm the new President and CEO of Cap Metro. I'm 7, 8 weeks in, something like that. It's been a little bit of a whirlwind, and I really just wanted to come out and say hi to you all, introduce myself. We obviously have a great partnership, and I know that our team has been really working closely with Josh, and they said the relationship has really been good, and Josh has been great to work with. And I'm not just saying that because I know he has an evaluation later today. They actually said the relationship has been great. And I know that we're working closely with you on your big Lago Fest this weekend, and we hope it goes really well for you. It sounds like you got a big band and a big show. Josh says it might even be bigger than the actual population of the whole city. So it sounds like a fantastic event, and we're really just happy to be partners with you and hope it goes really well. And I know we're then going to be queued up on the July 4th as well. So Really didn't want to take a lot of your time. Wanted to make sure that I did come out. I'm doing my listening tour around the region. We really value you as a member of the service area and as a partner. And outside of that, look forward to a good future relationship and definitely have my information, and anything we can do in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out, okay? So hopefully that's underneath your 3-minute cap and keep you on the flow of the agenda. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Clark. All right, I forgot to make an announcement because I failed to do it myself. If you haven't silenced your phone, please do so at this time. All right, next up, I have Mark Tippett. If you would, please introduce yourself and state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
My name is Mark Tippett, 22313 Cape Travis Bend here in beautiful city of Lago Vista. I just wanted to take a few minutes. I haven't had a chance to congratulate the new members of the City Council. I have congratulated Mr. Williams personally, but I wanted to congratulate the new members. I have been absent for quite a while, and it was nothing personal. It was just business and actually campaigning since I've left the council. I was persuaded to run on the Libertarian ticket to seek the nomination for governor. I won that nomination, so I will officially be on the ticket with what you might call the big boys, or the big boy and the girl, depending on who wins this 22nd. And what I also wanted to say is, sitting on this council, not only was it a privilege and an honor for me, but it also reconfirmed something that is very deep-rooted in me, and that is government must stay local. You need to fight to keep government local. The decisions must maintain and stay local. Nobody more than the local council and the local people know better how to run their city. Austin can't and Washington can't. When they make a mistake, it takes decades to clear up, and we're paying for it forever. And while you all know I am not always in favor of all the decisions that the City Council makes, but once a decision is made, I always got behind that decision and supported it. And that is how it works. And we must keep it local, because any mistake that is made locally, it can be cleared up locally. It can be recognized locally, and the steps can be taken to clear it up. And if any mistake is made, it is paid for locally. It is not paid for by some massive blanket decision made by Austin or Washington. And that is why actually I decided to run for governor, is to fight for those rights. Some of those rights, which you all are aware, were taken away from this council on the last go around. Anyway, I thank you very much, and I appreciate all your service. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Tippett. All right. Next, I have Larry Russell. Mr. Russell? Please state your name and address for the record.
Larry
please.
Russell, 20914 Oakdale Drive. I'm not running for office, just to clarify here. So. My questions or comments, I guess, are kind of about building codes and enforcement thereof. I think I read something recently in one of the letters that came out that any building, accessory building more than 120 square feet has to be architecturally similar to the main residence. And I think last year y'all also passed a new ordinance that said that any accessory building of greater than that size could not be more than 50% of the square footage of the main residence. And I think maybe your building services guy back here, maybe he can confirm that. The reason I bring that up is just noticing around in some of the new construction, begin to see some things that raises some questions as, are those really being enforced? Are those really the ordinances or not? And I'll cite one example is there's a building down on Rockwood, I think just off from the intersection of Outpost Trace. And it's a large metal building. And first off is it's much larger than the house from appearance sake. Architecturally, there's nothing similar when that building, it's a building with 4 walls and a roof, I guess if that's architecturally similar, but it's a metal building and it doesn't look anything like the house. This past weekend, happened to be driving around a little bit, and I noticed down on Highland Lakes Drive that there's another big metal building going up down there attached to a slab. I'm assuming there's going to be a house or something there. I'm not sure. Maybe there's some different zoning there, not sure what that is. But I'm beginning to see these things come up, and this kind of follows after last year or the year before, whenever it was the incidents of the one that's up here off of Country Club and that, where the gentleman built the big metal building beside the lady's house that basically killed her property value. So I guess a question, if those are really building codes that we have, are they being enforced, and how are these things being built? Is anybody looking at the plans? Is there an architectural review committee? You know, how's the process going? So it looks like there's some, to me, as a citizen living here, and that it looks like there's some discrepancy out here in how things are being done.
All right,
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, can I make a comment on that, just factual response? Larry, I've seen some of those same things and brought them up with Roy and P and Z. That one on Rockwood, if you take a look, it's attached, maybe by a breezeway, it may be enclosed, we'll have to see, but bottom line, it's considered part of the main residence. And our ordinances are not very tight on what can be on the main building. And it needs to go to P and Z and be adjusted. So we're tighter on that. That's the reason, at least on the Rockwood example.
I'd heard that. Thank you for confirming that.
Yeah.
So I guess I could have tied a breezeway between my house and my shop and not had to put more stone on it after it was already done. Anyway.
Right now, the
but-
only
but the
requirement-
issue, but still to that. So, okay, so you get around it. So that's kind of a loophole, right? It seems like a pretty big gap. But even if you have to have accessory buildings that are architecturally similar to your main residence, why shouldn't that be?
But
And
the
you
problem-
can't, okay.
The problem is on the main residence, the only requirement is 25% masonry. The rest of it could be tissue paper. And that's the problem, and we need to fix that, and we're working on that.
All right. Mr. Russell, I invite you to, call and set up an appointment and come in and speak with somebody during the day, and get some better answers when we can actually address it outside of, since we only have 3 minutes at this point. All right, next I have Craig, and I'm sorry, is it Ovison?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Please state your name and address, please.
Craig Ovison. I have some property at 10307 Vance Circle Road in Jonestown. I'm also known as Craig the Butterfly Man in the area. I started gaining my national prominence as a lepidopterist at Balcones Canyonlands about 2006. I actually brought my exhibit trailer to a couple of the festivals down on the lake, and actually PBS did a little special on me around 07 or 08, something like that. And since then, I've traveled the country a lot and promoted the bugs. I'm thinking about maybe we can work together here, and I can put up a live butterfly sanctuary exhibit. I've got a 3,000 square foot structure I'd be happy to put up. It may cost the taxpayers a little money, but I'd like to put it on city property or private property. I'm not picky. So I'd like to have you all consider, and we'll talk about this obviously in the future. I just wanted to introduce myself and let you know what I'm up to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Council members, just so y'all know, he sent me a detailed email with all of his history and background. I included y'all on that email, but it was late in the afternoon, so there'll be some more details on him in y'all's inbox. All right, next. Ms. Davis, I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce your, Claudine?
Yes.
Claudine Davis. Thank you. Please state your name and
Claudine
your
Davis.
address. You may have to pull the microphone down some. We got people watching on television, so they need to be able to hear you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. My name is Claudine Davis, and I live at 20104 Cartier Cove in Lago Vista. The reason I'm coming before you tonight is to protest my sewer bill for the month of April. January, February, and March, my sewer bill was $47.08 per month. This month, it is $149.45. Now, I called into your offices, and she very kindly explained to me that the reason it went up is because it is prorated according to the amount of water I use. And I can sort of understand that. However, I live alone. I am a widow, and I have company maybe 2 or 3 times a year for 2 or 3 days. I never use any more water than I do every month, the same every month. Now, I have a big yard, and in the wintertime, I water it once a week like I'm supposed to keep it alive. And in the summer months, May, June, July, and possibly August, I water 2 times a week like I am allowed to do. I do this in order to keep a live yard that is looking halfway decent. I don't think it's fair that I have a triple bill just because I water my yard. That has nothing to do with your sewer system. It goes on my yard, not down the drain to the sewer. So I would like to put this before you for your consideration. I would appreciate anything that you could do in helping this situation. I'm sure there are other people in the area with the same problem. But I would appreciate you looking into that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Davis. All right, that is everybody that I have that has signed up to speak. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak that did not sign up? All right. At this time, we're going to move into items of community interest. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.0415, the City Council may report on any of the following items. Number 1, expression of thanks, gratitude, and condolences. I would personally like to kind of combine 1 and number 3, recognition of individuals. We had Miss Cindy Cleary that was working as one of our court clerks, and Miss Donna O'Neill, who is one of our dispatchers down at the police department. They've both retired from the city of Lago Vista this week. Cindy was with our court for 10 years, and Donna was a dispatcher for 17 and a half years. And I would just like to personally recognize them and thank them for their service to the city of Lago Vista at this time, and hope they enjoy their retirement. Does anybody else on council have anything for number 1?
Mayor, I have 2 items of thanks, if I can add those in now.
Yes, sir.
The first item is from the Lago Vista Independent School District. The letter is from Michelle Jackson, the principal, and Eric Holt, the assistant principal at the elementary school. Recently, they had a Touch a Truck event. You may be aware of this event. They bring in trucks throughout the community for the kids to come up and literally touch the vehicle, but to get exposure to this, to these different apparatus throughout what the community uses to work with. Excellent event. James and Dave's crews, Eric Belay, lined this up so that we had a backhoe crew, a bucket truck crew, we had 4. There's 2 others. They don't come to me. Let's just stick with, we had 4 vehicles and a team of drivers to go out and operate this. We have some really cool pictures from what they were doing. Phenomenal to have them out there. Chief Smith had a police cruiser out there. He had an officer. Obviously, the kids love to see a police cruiser and to touch the lights. And so these guys were so happy. Our Chief Donnie had the fire truck out there, which is also a big hit. But they were so happy with this experience. They said to the council, you're an example of the difference one person can make. I appreciate the city of Lago Vista being part of our event. The trucks were awesome, and the crews did a great job talking to the kids about how they worked. They'll always be remembered, and they'd love to see us again there next year. There was a UPS truck there as well. I tried to get into the back of the UPS truck, but since I was above the height restriction of the kids, they didn't let me do it. It's my one chance at greatness. It's gone forever until next year's event. When that event comes up again next year, I'll pass that information along to you. You may want to come out and check it out. It's a phenomenal event that they do in the school. Second letter, Mayor, comes from our Hill Country Singers. This was sent to the commission from their treasurer, Betty, and she said, on behalf of the Hill Country Singers, I want to thank you for your very generous donation. As you know, your donation goes to support the concert season. This donation will go towards the fall 2018 and spring 2019 concerts. The choir helps to bring a music experience of the highest quality to our community, and we can't thank you enough for this donation. Hill Country Singers has the city logo on their brochures. They say thank you in public at the event. I know that the mayor and I were at the same event on some day listening to their
Sunday afternoon.
Thank you, sir. And I think it was phenomenal. It's great to have them in the community and providing this experience to the kids and the community members here. And then we have a number of people that sing in Hill Country Singers. So just want to pass that along. In this section, which, as the mayor said, is a new section that we're presenting on our agenda. In the future, we won't put all these items, however, we'll go through them now because they're there. We'll only put the items that we have something to bring up, but wanted to make this aware to our citizens of this new section where we can provide those updates to everyone.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a letter or anything, but I was speaking with Paul, the mayor of Jonestown, the other day, and he brought it to my attention that when the fire was out by Nameless Road, and everybody in Jonestown was very busy trying to get in there and take care of it, that Danny and the police force sent extra officers over to help them with traffic control, to assist them in getting everybody through there and controlling things so that the fire could be eliminated. Paul expressed gratitude to Danny, to the police force, to the city. He said that it was a bit of cooperation that hasn't necessarily been in the past, and he was really impressed with the job that our officers did and how they helped out. And he wanted to let us know that he did appreciate it. They were very well aware of it and hoped that this was signs of a new cooperation that could exist between our two cities.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, number 2, information regarding holiday schedules. Off the top of my head, the only thing I can think of is Memorial Day, at the end of this month. City offices will be closed on Monday, Memorial Day. Sir, do you have anything? You know more of the city schedule.
No, sir.
All right. Number 3, recognition of individuals. Touched on that already. Reminders regarding city council events. Between now, council members, if you would, between now and the next council meeting, could you tell us what board committee meetings that y'all have between now and the 17th?
We don't have an airport advisory board scheduled. One might come up in the next 3 or 4 weeks, but I don't know if we'll have one before our next council meeting.
Okay.
Mayor, the Board of Adjustment meets tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And then at 6:30, we have the Charter Review Committee meeting. And then on Tuesday, we have the Building Committee meeting at 7 o'clock. So those 3 things are on my agenda. I'm looking forward to them.
Golf Course Advisory Committee met yesterday and will not meet again until the first Wednesday of June.
And the other library won't meet until July.
Okay. Number 5, reminders regarding community events. Okay, in 2 days, Lago Fest, featuring Asleep at the Wheel.
Mayor, we have a great lineup for Lago Fest. It will occur on Saturday. If you went on to Eventbrite and got your free ticket, then you have received a couple of updates through that service, which will tell you about parking. We're encouraging everyone to get to a parking lot early so you can park your vehicle, get on one of the wonderful Cap Metro buses that have been provided with air conditioner, get on the bus, come in, check out the event. As the mayor mentioned, we have an excellent lineup of music. Dave put on the logo for this year's event, Boats, Beats, Arts, and Eats. I think you're going to see plenty of that, of all 4 there. The lineup on the screen is Jennifer B. in the Groove. She's local and she performs all over the area. She's going to be our starter. Drew Womack Band has been here before. Very excited to have Drew. He's got a phenomenal sound. The Night Owls are new to our group, to our city, but they cover all of the Southwest. They have an excellent sound. If you haven't heard them, go on YouTube, type in the Night Owls. I think our people are really going to enjoy that. And then this other band, I don't know if, I think they're new. It's Ray Benson, I think who the guy is, kind of short fella. And he does this band called Asleep at the Wheel. So I'm not sure if they drive a vehicle while they're singing, but I think they might have a big following in the state of Texas. We're very excited to have them here. I do know that we have 8 food trucks lined up. There could be 9. So if you have some disposable income and an appetite on Saturday, this is the place to be. I know that there's a business that's going to be there called Garbo's, and they have a lobster roll that is phenomenal. If Counselor Williams was here, he'd tell you about all the food that he's been eating for the last 3 months to make sure that we have the most exquisite culinary arts presentation at Lago Fest this time. We've advertised, we have the information's out, we encourage everyone to be there. We're gonna have the boats pulling up. From what I've been told, boats are gonna be parking all the way around the outside and people are just gonna be coming in groves to the event. Personally, I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see the layout of activities. Tons of artists will be around the park at Barquet. And so very exciting process to see Lago Fest 2018. The beauty of this year is I can guarantee you this event's been planned for 365 days. And I'd say 365 because it started last year, the day of the event. And more than likely, the planning will not finish until this Saturday. So although we've had members working pretty hard and diligently on this, it's going to keep going up until probably Asleep at the Wheel hits the stage. We have a number of sponsors this year of all ranges. It's great to have sponsorship because that's what really provides for this event and the music lineup that we're excited to see come to Lago Vista. There's going to be a lot of events in Austin this weekend, but there's obviously no better event than Lago Fest 2018. So if you leave the city of Lago Vista, get back as quickly as you can. I'm hoping Sam will come back and check this out and maybe just randomly show up on a Cat Metro bus to check it out because this lineup is phenomenal. And the beauty of it is it's just the tip of the iceberg for what we expect to see in years to come with this festival. Rest assured, it doesn't go on without plenty of staff time, including council time. I know that Councilor Weatherly has been on that board. I know that Councilor Williams has been involved in the board. And I would guarantee that everyone sitting here and potentially everyone sitting here has somehow had a role to play in the presentation of Lago Fest this year. One way or another, you've probably helped it out. We might even have Jennifer do something with Poll Partners. At this point, it's a community event and we're very excited to have everyone involved into it. So that's the layout. Very similar to last year in terms of overall numbers, but this year we think the difference is going to be the draw from outside the community, and hopefully all of our citizens will be here to enjoy this free festival.
I would like to add one thing to that. Last year, one of the things that we noticed was there was a real lack of opportunities for the kids. We just simply overlooked it. We admit it. We lost out. We should have done better. But this year we are. We're going to have a petting zoo. There will be the train ride as there was last year. We're doing a couple of things different with some games and toys, things that the kids can get involved in. So if you're a younger family with kids, we have included you this year. Please bring your kids out and have a good time. We're looking forward to having you.
Mayor, just to change the subject, a week from tomorrow and a week from this Saturday is the library's book and bake sale, annual book and bake sale. It'll be on from 10 to 6 on Friday, and Friday the 11th, and from 10 to 2 on Saturday the 12th. So if people just remember that, they'll have books to buy, $10 a bag, plus all kinds of baked goods. So please come on out and support the library.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else? All right, and number 6, health and safety announcements. Don't drink and drive. All right. We are now going to go into our presentations. Agenda item number 7, presentation from Cap Metro. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council, City Manager Ray. My name is Sam Sargent. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff for Capital Metro. To start off by saying we are all very, very excited for Lago Fest this year. I wasn't able to make it in 2017, but I was there in 2016. Can certainly attest to what a good time it is. I think we could put the chief on 1431, make sure any Lago Vista residents heading out get told to come right back because they're going to miss the show. But City Manager Ray, next time the touch a truck comes up, let us know. We've actually done one down in the community of Manchac, and we bring one of our big 35-foot buses down there and, take the keys out of the ignition, let kids pretend to be a driver for a day. So. But with that being said, I really appreciate the opportunity to come out and speak to you again tonight. Some of you have seen me when I was presenting back in 2015 and 2016. We had our ongoing community conversation both here and with the Cap Metro Advisory Committee. That was very, very fruitful. So I'm glad to be back here, and I really want to keep this to be a regular update if we can, just because we are partners out here, and I want to continue to be able to provide as much information as I can. So I'm going to start just with a quick overview of Capital Metro before we get into the Lago Vista portion of it. As many of you probably know, Lago Vista, or Capital Metro, was founded in 1985 after a January referendum that included the city of Lago Vista voting into the system. It currently includes Lago Vista, Jonestown, Point Venture, Leander, Austin, Manor, and the community of Santa Leana to the south. It's about 535 square miles total, with about 1.1 million population within the service area, which obviously doesn't include that whole red portion. It's the yellow portion that you can see there. At present, we've got about 2,700 bus stops, including the 9 that are within the city of Lago Vista and the 15 that are on Route 214, which serves the city of Lago Vista. We've got 9 Metro Rail stations, 20 park and ride facilities, including the parking lot here in front of City Hall at the Lago Vista Park and Ride. We've got 79 bus routes and just shy of 400 vehicles. We also have a van pool program, which has been growing in popularity. This allows folks to get a pool together, get a Capital Metro owned vehicle through a very inexpensive lease arrangement. You also receive insurance and a gas card, cut down on the cost of commuting. And we've got 3 active in Lago Vista at the moment. I believe 1 goes to Dell and the other 2 go to state offices near the Capitol complex. And then we also have our paratransit service, which I'll get into in the Lago Vista context here in a moment. That's our door-to-door service for folks with disabilities. And then we have 2 Metro Rapid routes. These are services that run north-south, really in the central part of Austin, but stretch almost all the way up to Pflugerville and almost all the way down to Buda. They run every 15 minutes. And then our airport flyer service, that's quite popular. And so the bus out here, $1.25 if you do a one-way, $2.50 for a day pass. Seniors, veterans, Medicare, Medicaid, students under 18. Although this summer, I will note, we are going to have a pilot project that we're going to gather some metrics on, and we hope to extend into the next academic year, where students K through 12, regardless of their school district, regardless of their school, so that can include homeschool, charter school, private school, ride Capital Metro services free. Across the board, train, bus. So we're hoping that it gives students and young people or families looking to go out for a day trip, especially if you were to take your kids, grandkids to Lakeline Station, cut down on the cost of taking a trip into downtown Austin if you want to poke around. We're also going to extend service to 10 a.m. on 2 Saturdays a month so that we can get more families out there. But just so you know, the bus out there is $1.25, and it links into Lakeline Station where the train is, and that's $3.50. So Lago Vista, just our history out here. Some of you have seen these slides probably 2 years ago, but I just want to go back over them. We have operated essentially the current 214 route that stops right outside of here and goes on Barquet and Paseo de Vaca since 1989, when bus service first started out here. We also had what was called a dial-a-ride service. It's sort of a late 80s version of an Uber or Lyft, where folks could call up in a certain zone and get a ride back then to either the Leander or Cedar Park park and rides or grocery stores in that area. And then van pools, which is effectively the rideshare program I mentioned. We briefly, in 1996, 1997, we had a circulator that operated solely within the city of Lago Vista and went out to the island. And it moved between some of the golf courses and went to, is it Boggy Ford over towards Highlands Golf Course? Barkay Ranch. And this was in response to some citizen interest in moving within Lago Vista to get from the commercial area to the island in particular, and to connect to the Lago Vista feeder, which headed into Cedar Park and Leander. Unfortunately, ridership was a little bit low after that year and it was discontinued, but I do know from our conversations in 2015, 2016, that was still a topic that came up quite a bit, was how can we get around inside of Lago Vista, especially if you were not commuting into Austin or going to Lakeline or the HEB Plus there, or the Coles or the ACC Cypress Creek campus, which are all served. And effectively in 1997, the routing that we have today came into existence, continued to serve Barkay Ranch, and it picked up a little bit of the feeder, the highest ridership areas of the circulator, just to make sure we didn't leave any of the apartment complexes or the mobile home park out of the service. 2009, our train service, as well as our express buses, which come out of Lakeline, that allowed Lago Vista to connect directly into that service. And at present, we still have 2 express routes that run out of there into downtown Austin, but they also serve Seton, the University of Texas, and the Capitol Complex. Those routes operate from about 5 a.m. in the morning, and you can get your last return trip from downtown Austin until about 10:30 at night. So it's an all-day bidirectional service on the weekdays. And then CARTS, which many of you may know is our rural service provider, they also tie in here their service that goes out towards Marble Falls in that area. So right now, 214, what stops out here, goes to Lakeline, goes to the HEB in that commercial area, goes to ACC Cypress Creek, which is a great partnership that we have through an interlocal agreement with the Community College District, so that we can get folks from Lago Vista as well as Jonestown or from the train station, tie them into the offerings there at that campus, and then coming into Lago Vista. We operate about 32 trips a day. That's 16 in each direction, 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. currently just on weekdays. And you can see just sort of the close-up of the city of Lago Vista now. And then here's our monthly ridership totals on 214 over the course of 2017. There was about 18,300 trips total. Since we don't track individuals, there's not a way to. We just know how many people are getting on, and then we don't really have a good sense of where the individuals are getting on and off. But by and large, when we have done spot checks of this, over half of the trips originate and then terminate in Lago Vista. I think it's about 55% of the entirety of 214, and the bulk of those, I believe, are going all the way into Lakeline for folks who are commuting regularly. You can see the trends here. We usually have a spike in the fall when the weather's better, and it dips in the winter and in the summer when school is out and when it's hotter, which makes the experience of riding a bus a little bit more difficult when you have to wait outside. So as I said, over 50% of rider activity is in Lago Vista. That's the range based on the checks that we do, and 9 of the 14 stops are within the city of Lago Vista. So it's really always been focused on connectivity between this city and the general, what was Cedar Park when they were in the service area, now Lakeline, but also the city of Jonestown, which has 3 stops. So the cost of service for Route 214 as a whole is about $530,000 over the course of the fiscal year. That's $66.95 an hour. That's pretty much our going rate for a transit agency of our size. We do get economies of scale compared to smaller agencies or to places that contract out with private service providers. And then about $2,000 is the daily operating cost. This doesn't include Metro Access service, which I'll get into a little more detail here in a moment. And as I'm going through these slides, please feel free to interject with any questions you may have. Otherwise, we can hold to the end. So the sales tax, as you all know well, 1 penny goes to the city of Lago Vista, 1 penny, which is the arrangement under state law for Metropolitan Transportation Association or authorities, goes to Capital Metro, and then 6.25 goes to the state of Texas. The sales tax, by my estimate or by our CFO's count, and I think this squares with with the last budget that I saw for the city of Lago Vista was roughly $420,000 for a single penny. And obviously that's been growing over the years. And then by virtue of being members of Capital Metro, you know, the amount of service that's here and then that penny, there's a program called Build Central Texas, or BCT. That's where we really try to make cities that don't get as much service as they pay in, try to make them whole through funds that can be used for road infrastructure projects. These can roll over from year to year. I know in the past when I was out here in 2015, 2016, I believe the previous city manager, there were a couple projects where they banked maybe about $100,000 so they could do a much larger project, and that's still an option for these small towns. So towns that are not Austin or Leander are participants in this program. The annual BCT allocation, which I think was renegotiated in 2016, is $42,000. It's a year-to-year agreement, so it can be renegotiated as time goes on. There's not a set formula for it, although usually it is based on the amount of service a place gets. So Leander has rail. That's why they're not able to access the BCT funds, and that way we can distribute them among the other cities.
Are you on the same fiscal year that we are, the October to September?
Yes, sir.
And so if Josh wanted to work with you to renegotiate that, would it be something he would do around this time of the year for in effect next year, or?
I want to say that the last ILA went through our board, and I assume would have gone through city council, but I remember seeing it on our board was in June or July, so that makes sense. That as we're doing our budget negotiations or budget planning internally, and you are, that's something that if Josh wants to reach out to me, I can get him in touch with our CFO.
Perfect.
And we can, and they can chat about that. As I mentioned, or as was mentioned, we also operate our special event shuttles out here. We are very happy to be doing Lago Fest for the third time, and I believe the 4th of July celebration will either be the third or the fourth time, but we'll be back again this summer. Just for folks who are watching on television or in the room here, we will have our first buses arriving at the park and rides, which are Lago Vista Village Shopping Center, since we've got a good amount of parking over there, as well as the parking spaces here at City Hall. So we'll be running two routes, if you will. We didn't want to hit both places and then go down to Barcade because it throws off the frequency. So we're going to have 8 buses out here total. They're going to be the 35-foot buses, which are larger than the 214 that you see out front. That's what we've used in years past. And the service will begin around 11 a.m., really start ramping up around noon, and then we'll be out until 10:30. I know that it ends at 9 p.m., but we'll officially be out till 10:30, but we always keep a sweep bus out here. That way, if the organizers are walking around the park and notice anybody who's still out there, or if there's any event staff, we can get them safely back to their vehicle. And this is an annual partnership that's been not only been really, I think, great for Capital Metro to get a chance to show off our vehicles and show off our service, but I think it leads to a really great and safe event just to keep folks from trying to park along some of the narrow streets down towards the lake.
Just off the top of your head.
Yes,
I
sir.
know there's no cost to the citizens or to us, but what is the cost incurred by y'all for an event, something like this?
I may need to get back to you on that. I know that I've seen a number in the past. I can't speak to it. I know our average cost per hour for service is at 66, and we'd have 8 buses, so I'd have to do a little bit of multiplication, but I can get that to you via email if that's all right.
Great, thank you.
And ahead of time, I can get you 4th of July as well, because that service operates a little bit differently. And I wanted to, I thought that I was going to have a slide in here, but I mentioned Metro Access on this slide. So Metro Access is a door-to-door program. It needs to be a door-to-door trip within our service area, which from our discussions back in 2016, I know was sort of an issue because Cedar Park Medical Center is a much easier trip to get to than some of the places more in central Austin if you're going for a medical trip, although there is North Austin Medical Center on 4 North Mopac. But for folks who qualify for this, it's door-to-door service that you can either book a trip by phone or on our mobile app or on our website. You wind up getting a client ID and you can book the trip. At present, we have 7 what we call active Metro Access clients. These are folks who make at least 1 trip a week. And over the course of last year, I believe there was a total of 1,700 trips were made from either to or from Lago Vista to a variety of appointments. Not just medical. There are many folks who have disabilities who use Metro access to get to work, get to church. It's 7 days a week. It operates whenever bus service is operating in our system. So those trips could range from 5 a.m. to past midnight for folks who need it.
Sergeant, can I ask you
Yes,
a
sir.
question? Actually, I have a couple of questions that have to do with the service level. Do you plan at any point to restart the circular service that you mentioned earlier?
When we were out here, we had our head service planner. So he's the person that makes the schedules, does the cost assessments, does the routing, goes out and does field work to see, can we safely put a bus stop here? I know that he had worked up basically a redesign of what had existed back in 1996. And one benefit of membership is just that gives the city and Capital Metro quite a bit of flexibility. So if we see something that the community is asking for, we can start pursuing it, or we can run a pilot program, which is something we've been doing quite a bit lately. And we actually did a really innovative pilot in the Mueller neighborhood in Austin, where we took one of the vehicles that's about the size of what you would see out here, and it was an on-demand wheelchair accessible vehicle that went point to point within that zone. And so that's something we've been looking into, because one issue with the circulator is that while it does help more people right in Lago Vista than Route 214 would, simply because it goes further into the city, there's still a lot of houses that it's not going to get to, and folks may not want to walk to it. So the benefit of these pilots we've been doing that are on demand is that we'll run them for 6 to 12 months to gauge the data and the ridership and see if it's working, but that we can go door to door. So that's something we've been looking at a number of our non-Austin communities. So the answer is yes, we have. We have built schedules and we know what the routing would look like for this, but we think that you get a lot more bang for your buck out of doing these door-to-door services in a place like Lago Vista.
The other question I had has to do with the possibility of you expanding your service to areas that might be beneficial to our citizens here.
Sure.
There's a new ACC campus that's going in close to Leander. Is there any possibility that people, if we have high school graduates here going to ACC, is there any possibility of them being able to use that bus service to get to that campus?
We could certainly look into routing that would serve that campus. That's actually been a close partnership we've also had with ACC, because as you mentioned, it's right there behind Leander Station. So it's in the transit-oriented development zone. For when it starts, because we do service change 3 times a year, January, June, and August. So that's when we make these types of changes, and we like to give it about a 4 to 6 month lead time. So let's say it was when the campus first opens in the fall. You could take Route 214 to Lakeline and then catch a bus to Leander from there. So there would be a transfer. But we can certainly look for the, say, January 2019 service change is where we're kind of in the ideas phase at finding a way for 214 to have some connectivity with that campus as well as Cypress Creek. Because I do know that a lot of high schoolers these days are taking advantage of courses there.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, that is something that we can certainly look into as part of our service change, because we're really excited that we've got that destination up there right now.
And Sam, he mentioned the circulator from 96.
Yes, sir.
You and I have spoken on this earlier, but as we grow in that southern circle there, that Highland Lake Boggy Ford loop, we're going to have an apartment complex going up in that area. There's a potential for a hotel on the Highland Lake side. Down at the tip where Highland and Boggy and American all come together, there's some commercial property that used to have a hotel down there that is on the market. It'd be nice if we had another hotel in that area, but you never know.
Sure.
But that loop there could be quite popular, and it also takes you by the high school.
Yeah, and
So
that's
the corridor along Lowman, Boggy, Highland. I would say over the next 5 years, it's going to get fairly busy.
Sure.
We have a company here tonight to talk about some growth in that area. So that's something that, we've all got to work together to keep our eye on.
Absolutely.
That's going to be a growth area.
Yeah, I'd been following the hotel story on the North Shore Beacon, so I knew that was in the works, which is very exciting because doesn't take much of an amateur planner to realize that when you're planning transit, in a perfect world, we could go everywhere. But resources being finite, we have to look for the places where we have the most density of students, seniors, residents, and certainly businesses. And from our experience just across the service area, hotels, can't telework if you work at a hotel. And so that has always been a really strong place for transit ridership. And especially if you have sort of your entry-level employees too, some of them may not live in Lago Vista, and so finding an inexpensive way to get them to work, keeps the hotel running, keeps them happy, and saves them some money. So yeah, we'll certainly keep an eye on those developments, because as we were looking at the map earlier, there is a loop, which is another important element for the way that Lago Vista is set up, is how do we turn the bus around? And I think when they were doing this in '96, it turned around there at the island, which is pretty tight. And so if there was a way to kind of hit some of these highlight points, that would be really great. And yes.
Sam, as things evolve out here, what's the process that we would use to work with you to request these changes and try things to see if they make sense?
Sure. So our service change process, which is guided by a board-approved document called the Service Guidelines and Standards, that's what sets out sort of the timelines and things to look for, things that we know make transit work best. That is one component of how a route is planned to try to maximize its productivity or the number of people we move per hour. But an equally important side is just community input. That's really it. And that can be done through myself, through Mr. Clark, who, if you all didn't get his card, I can certainly get you his direct line. But then also when we get emails from folks out in the community, feedback@capmetro.org is kind of the primary mechanism. But these days we know that people don't just call our customer service line or send an email. Our social media account, we get lots of messages that are related to, apartment complex just went up here. What's the thinking? Could we get a route out here? And all of that is logged and goes into our planning process. So it's development, it's industry best practices, but it's also just government and community input. That's a large part of it.
If we had town hall events out here where community came together to talk about these issues, is that something we should notify you guys about, so someone like yourself could come attend and
Sure.
listen live?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. If there's ever an opportunity, either an event that's not related to Capital Metro or transit, but there's kind of a community resource kind of forum, we can always bring our community involvement folks out to table. Or if there's an opportunity to speak or listen, we can do that as well. I remember back in, I guess it was May of 2015 when I came to the Performing Arts Center at the high school, when there was the initial discussion about Capital Metro and Lago Vista. So there's a wide variety of forums. We've held our own open houses in the library. That was a good venue as well. A little more casual than having the stadium seating and the lights on you. But yeah, we'd be more than happy to send planning staff, finance staff, myself.
Perfect. Thanks.
So.
Speaking of which, now that we're roughly 3 months out from the August service change, it might be something we need to look at to see if something to the high school
Right.
needs to be added.
Sure, and that was also, I remember we discussed it, and Roberto Gonzalez, who's our chief service planner, who came out a number of times, he was able to model, what does 214 look like if you run it to the high school, and because we know the high school is a destination not only for parents, students, but also for employment and for activities, fine arts, you name it. Forgive me, the program's name is escaping me, but the program at the high school for students who are over 18, we worked with the organizer of them to learn sort of independent life skills, job training. So I worked with the superintendent on that, and that's something, this free fare concept, which we're gonna do during the summer, but if all goes well, our board will look at extending it in perpetuity. That would be an opportunity if we're serving the high school, get a student to a job, get them to ACC, get them not necessarily right away to Leander, but get them to the ACC Cypress Creek campus. So, so that's something we can look at.
Use that to commute to jobs at HEB.
Oh yeah, HEB Plus or the Lowe's here in town, both of those. But yeah, I believe when he looked at it, so one of the factors in planning a route, just to make sure it's efficient, is you get to a point where if you're running at a certain frequency and you extend X number of miles, you then have to drop another vehicle in, which increases your cost quite a bit. But I believe when he ran those numbers based on the frequencies we have here, it only knocked the frequency up or down say the time that time in between buses only went up a little bit because it's about a mile out and back. If we were to basically maintain Route 214 as is, I think the way he had it was it would go on Barquet and, it would go on Barquet, make that loop, go to City Hall, make that loop, and then drop down to the high school and then pretty much make a beeline back towards Jonestown, ACC. But yes, so we have looked at that, and that's something that we can discuss as part of any future discussions about routing, whether it's for 214 or one of these pilot programs that we're really trying to try on a number of different markets. We've only done it in Mueller, because Mueller in Austin, as well as the pretty dense apartment neighborhood that's a little bit more low income to the north of it, we found a zone that allowed us to operate 3 vehicles pretty efficiently, but there was a nice mix of incomes, densities, employers, so that was a good test environment. But now we're kind of moving on, what can we do in a more rural, a more suburban, or a high density area? So we're really just trying to test it, because this may be sort of a future of transit in many ways, is that you can move lots of people along very dense corridors or along a railroad, but what are the ways that you can pull them into those stations? So that can certainly be part of any future community discussion.
Perfect.
And with that was, get to the money slide, which was this fantastic ad I found from 1971 for Lago Vista that I passed on to the North Shore Beacon as well. I found it online, thought it was fantastic. So still just as pretty. But with that, that's all I have. But I really do appreciate the time, not only for myself, but for Randy Clark. He really enjoyed the chance not only to meet you, but also to speak with City Manager Ray. And I look forward to working with all of you as well as the City Manager. So if there's any other questions, I can answer them. But if not, I believe most of you either have my direct email and phone number, but if not, I can distribute it through Josh, and we can go from there.
I had one more question.
Yes, sir.
So sometimes out here, the stops for the bus have gotten overgrown. There's no cover over some of the benches. A lot of places there's no benches. If we wanted to try and get some additional facilities,
Amenities, yes.
Facilities and maintenance
Sure.
of those, how do we request that?
You can go through me as well.
Okay.
Consider me your point of contact on that, because I can get in touch with our facilities folks and say, what is the schedule for doing these regularly, whether it's trash pickup or brush clearance, and if that time frame is too infrequent, then we need to address that, because the last thing we want to do is have these overgrown, but also potentially ADA inaccessible bus stops, because we know that around here, especially up near Paseo de Vaca, that we don't, because there's not a lot of sidewalk connectivity, but that's not necessarily a barrier, because we have areas in the city of Austin that are TxDOT right away that don't have sidewalks, that we still put a bus pad on so that somebody could safely get on and off the wheelchair lift.
Right.
But yes, you can go through me, and we can look at that and see what's if maintenance is not being done as regularly as it should, but also going forward, what can we add to make it a better experience? Because a bus stop is really critical for a bus user, whether they're a needs-based customer or they're just choosing to ride it. We really want to try to dignify their ride by making it as comfortable as possible, especially while they're waiting.
Sure.
So, but yes, you can go through me for that as well.
Perfect. Thanks.
I have one more question
Yes, sir.
also. I think you said that you don't have the metrics, the ridership metrics, as far as the number of people that are utilizing the system. I think this chart here is what got my attention.
Yes.
It looks to me like this is a monthly thing, as far as I can tell. Is that
Yes, sir.
not right? Okay, so just on average, it looks like we have something in the neighborhood of about 150 people monthly using the service. Is that right? Or 150 riders? It could be.
So we, on average, it's more in the 1,500 range.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry.
I have a hard time seeing the number.
Yes,
It looks like
yeah, it's
150 to
in
me.
the 1,500 range. I
Okay.
think because we only run weekdays, it's pretty quick math. I think we're in the range right now, maybe 90 a day, 80. You're a numbers guy, aren't you? But yeah, so that's about a daily average. What I meant was that we do track ridership. So we always know on all of our vehicles, we have an automatic people counter, which is an APC. So you just cross the threshold, it counts you. We also do regular spot checks to try to get visuals. And so we know how many people are using the system. What we don't necessarily know all the time is where that one individual is coming and going. Because the way that our fares swipe, we're not tracking a person. There's only UT students we really get a sense of where they're going, not as a person, but just as a UT student, it's a unique swipe in the fare box. So we can look at it and say, oh, there are a lot of UT students making this particular trip, and what do we need to adjust? But from what we call our origins and destinations, we do a survey of customers, but we also do the spot checks. On 214, by and large, they are boarding here in Lago Vista and are either getting off near the HEB Plus or Lakeline Station.
But now, do those numbers also include people who board in Jonestown?
This is the total ridership, yes, but like I was mentioning with sort of the ridership split, it's in the 55% range. So you could 55% of these numbers would be a Lago Vista boarding or offloading. Jonestown, I haven't done the research on that. I'm not sure what percentage of ridership it is. We have an okay amount that runs from Lakeline to ACC Cypress Creek, but the majority, just over 50% of folks are either getting off here in the afternoon or boarding in the morning.
Okay.
We don't tend to see a lot of what we call reverse commuting. Somebody coming out here from Lakeline in the morning, although I have seen the tallies, and some of our earliest trips, they offload a number of folks over at 14th, over by the CVS that I can only assume are retail customer or retail employees who have boarded, I would assume, closer to Lakeline.
Yep.
And are you seeing a trend upward in the ridership?
On Route 214, it peaked around 2011, and then gas prices got cheaper, which is for any transit agency outside of probably New York City, is always when you see a ridership deflection. It's been steady since about 2015, I would say. It's not growing, but it's flat right now.
Okay.
And that's something that flat is not the worst thing in the world, certainly better than a decline for a route. But that's when we really start looking, okay, it's good that we've held the line with these customers. Clearly something is working for them. But as things like a hotel or a new store or more businesses going into, say, Lago Vista Village, that's when you really have to start reassessing and say, all right, we see people over here. Let's try to put a stop over there. And if we see that bump, then we've clearly done it correctly. So we definitely keep an eye out on land use and on development to make sure that these routes aren't stagnant, that they're not serving the people of 20 years ago, but are serving folks in Lago Vista today.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's nothing further, again, I can send around my email, but it's sam.sargent, SARGENT, @capmetro.org. So please feel free to reach out, and I very much appreciate your time. Can you do that again? Sam, SAM.Sargent, SARGENT, @capmetro, all one word, .org. Well, I thank you. Have a good evening.
Sam, appreciate it.
And please be in touch about any future either community events like Touch Truck, sounds very fun, or some sort of town hall forum.
Perfect.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I will do that on the way out.
All right, we now go into our public hearing. It's agenda item number 8. The Lago Vista City Council is holding a public hearing to receive citizen input and consider a concept plan, 18-1232-C plan, for a proposed commercial and residential development at 4300 Loman Ford Road on a tract of land currently in the extraterritorial jurisdiction, ETJ, of Lago Vista. And I will open the public hearing at 7:33 p.m. And we will start with our presentation. And Roy, I believe you're the lead on this.
Show you a picture here.
in many ways, this picture, which gives you a little more information, is in many respects misleading. What is in front of you is a subdivision application, not zoning, not design review, anything of the sort. It is what I would call a pre-preliminary plat application. In the ETJ, that is the only authority we have until the property's annexed. So what you're really looking at here that is relevant in front of you is the lot lines. If you could possibly do so, forget everything else except that division of property, because that's what's really in front of you. The purpose of a concept plan, according to our ordinance, is before you look at a preliminary plat, is to make sure that that plat and that division of property, if you will, is consistent with any other policy documents that might possibly impact, like the future land use plan that's in the comprehensive plan, for example. As such, those are the things that are addressed in the staff report. In the future land use map and the comprehensive plan, that intersection up at the top is not designated as commercial. They, in fact, have designated this as commercial. That is a line that they've drawn, if you will, up towards the top, where Boggy Ford hits Loman Ford. However, on the future land use map, the other three corners of that intersection are, in fact, commercial. I think the intent, if you will, was that this be a single large tract that was largely residential, much higher density residential than is actually being proposed. So, it's certainly not inconsistent to suggest that that fourth corner being reserved as commercial is in any way inconsistent with what the master plan says, which is that, that corner is a commercial corridor. And I don't think it's too far a leap to suggest that some of this property have a line in there and reserved to be, commercial. The other thing is, and it's a little bit strange, when you adopted the comprehensive plan, it had a level of density reserved here that was even higher. It was brought back to you about a year later, and this exact piece of property was brought to your attention as a staff as suggesting, well, the comprehensive plan is erroneous. It's suggesting a level of density that's unrealistic. And they asked you to reduce it, which you did. This applicant is suggesting that that was still too high, and they want to reduce it even further. The staff perspective is that it may even be too high still, but that is something that requires an engineering study, if you will, when we start looking at cut and fill and how big should the lots be, and are they too steep to support that kind of construction or whatever. But the bottom line is that from a consistency level, the comprehensive plan says that it should be maybe as high as 14 units per acre, and what you have here in front of you is more like 2 units per acre. And we think that that is probably very realistic, if ever so slightly ambitious. But that'll be something that we will address when an engineer is involved, when in fact the real preliminary plat comes in front of you.
All right, thank you. Jennifer, would y'all like to address council at this point? We have new council members since last time you were here, so
Yes.
please let everybody know who you are.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jennifer Pohl. I'm with Pohl Partners, and I've met some of you, but I've spoken to all of you. This is probably a lot of our first time to actually meet. We've been working on this project with the seller, Linda. She's here for a while now, over a year. And so we're finally, I feel like, in a place where we can all move forward. So what I'd like to do is, I know I've spoken to all of you, but I'd like to open it up for questions or comments or feedback. We are going to ICSC in 3 weeks to hopefully, with approval, talk to every retail developer, retailer that exists that is actively in the marketplace on the 19th through the 23rd. And hopefully, so like Roy said, they're gonna look at this, as more of a lot line because they will dictate the footprint of what that retail is gonna look like. And so, if you can, kind of ignore what the building sizes are for the retail and access because we don't make that determination anyway. So, yeah, we'd like to move forward. We've been working hard on it for a while, and Linda's been very patient. And yeah, if y'all have any questions, I'm all ears, and hopefully have a good answer.
I've got a question maybe more for Roy, and that was, I attended the P&Z meeting where they discussed this, and they voted unanimously for it, but one reservation seemed to be the issue of the 70 by 120 lots. They thought maybe they were on the smaller side. I wanted to ask, but I was the dutiful council member and kept my mouth shut during that meeting, but I'll ask it now, and that is, does that, do our ordinance, is it within our ordinances to have 70 by 120 foot lots?
As some of you know, in response to an email, one of the many gigantic holes that I brought to your attention is that we don't have minimum lot sizes in your ordinance at all.
Okay.
And that is, in my experience, somewhat unprecedented. It's something that needs to be addressed as urgently as we possibly can. However, in many cases, what is relevant here is the idea that you have cut and fill limitations that are intended to keep anybody from butchering your terrain, if you will, in an unrealistic and inappropriate way. And in many cases, it's the topography that dictates the size of the lot and how severe it is. Now, that doesn't mean you can't massage the earth as everybody has to for a building site. So the whole point is this is a fairly technical question that's going to be really involved at the preliminary plat stage between the engineer that represents the developer and Eric and myself in very detailed discussions about exactly what they are going to do in terms of the shaping the earth, if you will.
So bottom line is, the answer is no, it does not violate our current ordinances, correct?
Yeah, we have zero standards.
I just
We're
wanted
a postage size stamp.
Okay.
What they have to do to prove to us is we have minimum housing sizes for a zoning district. As long as they can put a building on there and meet those minimum requirements, we're going to approve that plat. And we actually, I have them do that. Sketch me out a house on this lot, prove to me it'll work. But other than that, I have no authority to say that lot's too small.
And then my other question was, none of this is final. I mean, this is a concept, and when it goes to the engineers and they do the platting, that's when we're gonna know what they're actually trying to accomplish on this piece of property.
And like I said, the next stage is what's called a preliminary plat. This is even before that.
Right, okay.
Do we have any plans at the P&Z level to come up with an ordinance that dictates lot sizes?
It's a subdivision ordinance. There are reasons. There are a number of issues that Eric and I have discussed in great detail. But the honest to goodness truth is there's a lot of things in our subdivision ordinance that, ought to be addressed, and one of which is minimum lot sizes, minimum frontages, for example.
Has there been any discussion at P&Z to establish those kinds of dimensions?
My comments myself, I mean, if you include those, I get you. The discussion is me speaking.
Okay.
I've been pushing really
There
hard
hasn't been
on-
much of an exchange, if that's what.
If I'm not mistaken, do we not have some lots and subdivisions that are 40, 50-foot wide lots?
That is why it has come up recently. Now, of course, that's in a PDD, and your standards can be adjusted in a PDD regardless. But I'll give you an example. I mean, we have people that are trying to carve up R4 lots all the time, and the honest to goodness, they're pushing that envelope pretty hard. But if they can squeeze it on there and meet all the other requirements, they can be tiny, and the frontage itself, it can be extremely dangerous if you don't have adequate frontage on a commercial lot and you don't have any standards for that. End of soapbox.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions or?
All right, well, we are in open public hearing, so is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak or ask questions of either Roy or Jennifer? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I need you to, sir, can you
Come up
please
to the
come to the
microphone.
microphone? And state your name again for us, please.
Yeah, this is Craig Overson, the butterfly man. So when Sarah put a subdivision out here, they did some work with Balcones Canyonlands, and I was kind of working with Balcones Canyonlands at the time. Sarah agreed to work with, I think it was Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, to have what they call forbs, or wildflowers, and particular Texas native grasses in a lot of these areas, and the people at the Sarah seemed real happy with that. If you're familiar with Balcones Canyonlands, it runs, I don't know, 6 or 7 miles along 1431. You'll have less maintenance in those common areas with this type of, I guess you'd call it foliage. We have particular mixes at the Wildflower Center that are adapted to these areas. So people seem to be around the country and around this area open to doing that in their subdivisions, because basically it's a money saver and it's environmentally friendly. So I'd like to, yeah, so maybe we can talk about that in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, if I don't have anybody else, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:46 p.m. And is there any further council discussion at all? All right. Thank you very much. We will now move into our consent agenda. Oh, is it? Okay, well, the way it was reading, I thought it was just a repeat of the same sentence. Okay, so I will go back. City Council to consider a concept plan, 18-1232 C plan, for a proposed commercial and residential development at 4300 Lowman Ford Road on a tract of land currently in the ETJ of Lago Vista. That is where we're at right now.
It said it's in the public hearing section. It didn't say anything about taking action. Can we take action?
It's set on your agenda to consider, and typically when you consider an item, you can have a motion to consider approval of that item. The concept plan, this is the first step in the subdivision process, and I believe that the applicant would want the council to consider it, make a motion to approve or disapprove, or with conditions, so that the applicant can move on to the next step.
Okay. Well, Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve concept plan 18-1232-C plan for proposed commercial and residential development at 4300 Lowman Ford Road on a tract of land currently in the extraterritorial jurisdiction, ETJ of Lago Vista.
And I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimous. All right, so now I will move into my consent agenda. All matters listed under consent agenda are to be considered routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion on these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. We have item number 9, approval of resolution number 18-1754, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, abandoning a portion of Austin Boulevard from Loman Ford to Observatory Hill in the City of Lago Vista, Texas.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Second?
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, consent agenda is approved unanimous. We move into action items. Number 10, discussion and consideration of ordinance number 18-05-03-01, amendment to Chapter 14, Section 5.90 of the Lago Vista Code of Ordinances to incorporate anti-monotony or similarity restrictions. And I will note that this is actually not on your agenda for a vote tonight. This is just for discussion. And
Mayor,
Roy, so I have you listed as the lead on this one as well.
And we advertised a public hearing that didn't make it on your agenda. So we will advertise that public hearing again and make sure that both the ad and the agenda are consistent. You'll have to apologize. I was in New Orleans and Sandra and I were trying to communicate over with my cell phone and texting, and we have a hard enough time when doing it face-to-face, much less with the telephone. But anyway, this is, I think, be honest with you, I think the first time I heard of this being a local issue was an email that I got from you that you forwarded on. I think the common way people refer to it was cookie-cutter subdivisions was their term of choice. We typically call them anti-monotony ordinances. The actual draft that we prepared calls it similarity restrictions as it appears in the ordinance. It goes in the larger section of exterior appearances of development. As Council Sullivan has mentioned, there's a lot of things that we need to fix in that larger category, but apparently there was the sense that this was the most urgent matter that needed to be addressed all by itself, get it up here, and that's what it is. We looked at a number of model ordinances that have been around for well over a decade in my experience. The good news of which is one of them was here in Georgetown, Texas, was one of the very first ones. I think it was challenged and withheld, so that always helps when you have one to look at that has survived judicial scrutiny. Ours is not, to my knowledge, exactly like any other ones, but after a lot of discussion, I think it retains the most important elements, and it is in fact defensible and is custom made for Lago Vista. It can get a little technical, but the honest to goodness answer is we just happen to have a meeting with a high volume house builder that's going to be moving into the area. And he would not be subject to these because he was going into PDD anyway. But just as a due diligence, if you will, he was under some deed restrictions, as part of that development. And he was very familiar with this, and he says, it's what we do anyway. It's not going to hurt anybody. The people that are interested in making sure that all their houses look different, it's consistent with what he wants to do and what the developers are requiring builders to do. So I don't think anybody's going to, this particular house builder didn't find it overly onerous.
So by passing this, the next person that applies for a building permit would comply with this?
Well, and this was a recommendation. It wasn't my recommendation, but one of the P&Z members asked us to include an exemption for people that had a sales contract that predated the effective date of the ordinance. I added the language that a notarized sales contract, but that was the other exemption he wanted to make, if anybody had a sales contract.
Oh, so you're on the back end of it. I was talking about the front end of it, where we have people who are about to make application for a building permit. You're talking on the backside, where maybe people may not even have the landscaping in place yet.
Right. The people who would typically be exempt would anybody that has a building permit already, okay, before the effective date of the ordinance would of course be exempt. They added the idea of, well, let's also include anybody that has a sales contract in addition to a building permit. That was something that P and Z requested we amend, and we did so.
Is that time bounded?
I'm sorry?
Is that time bounded?
Yes, from the effective date of the ordinance,
So sales contract, is that on the house or on the lot?
on the house.
So would it be a situation where someone signs a sales contract with a builder to build a house? And if that contract is signed, then before this goes into effect, they would be able to,
If it were notarized, yeah, we'd
Okay,
have to honor
okay.
it the way it reads. I added that because, at least they're gonna have, if they're going to be disingenuous, at least they're gonna have to get a notary to participate, was my theory.
Okay.
I don't know if Dottie.
Well, you would want something, a legal documentation, and that's the best way to do it.
got it, okay.
And if that was a recommendation that was made by P and Z, and we decided that that it should go into effect immediately, would
You
that
can
be?
take that out. You can instruct me to make that change.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
P and Z is a recommendation.
Right.
It's not a mandate.
And what was the,
Kevin has heard my speech many times before.
and what was the vote on P and Z? Was it?
Unanimous, yes.
Yeah. I mean, we're probably not very likely to have that sales contract situation.
Well,
I mean,
it goes away after time anyway. You follow me? It's
Sure.
a temporary thing. So I wasn't gonna make a huge issue out of it.
but I guess what I mean by that is cookie cutter homes, generally, you're not signing sales contracts ahead of time.
No.
That's generally it for a custom house that you're having built, for example. And you're not gonna have monotony issues.
Some of the volume builders do in fact sell them before they're finished, but they seldom pre-sell them before they
But-
start.
But they would have a building permit,
Right.
so that would have trumped it anyway.
That's my point.
Yeah,
It's a pretty, it wasn't enough for me to delay this thing any
Right.
further.
right.
I
So
said, okay, it may be silly, but I'm doing it.
is the issue that we didn't get the public hearing and notice soon enough, and that's the reason why?
No, it's actually, it was advertised soon enough, but I was in New Orleans when they assembled the agenda, and therefore I wasn't here. And I checked the box on public hearing on the summary. I thought she would catch it that way. She did not. I had to be here to tell her, call this a public hearing on the agenda.
Got it.
That's the flaw.
It didn't appear on the agenda as a
On the
public hearing.
agenda.
Okay, so we're gonna have to wait until our next meeting, then we can put it on the agenda as such, and then we can vote for it.
We can correct it. Dottie and I already had that conversation. I begged, pleaded, she wouldn't go for
And
it.
Well,
it just requires the one, right?
Your regulations require it, and you
Right.
should follow your regulations. Some cities on appearance regulations like this, because it's not a zoning regulation or a zoning boundary change, which requires a public hearing, they consider this a text amendment, and they would not have a public hearing on this. But in your case, since your ordinance requires it, you have to have it.
Chapter 14 is, it's easier to go ahead and have the public hearing and be safe.
Sure.
Roy,
Yes, sir.
with the exception of that particular part of this, the rest of it you're comfortable with, the rest
Yeah.
of it you feel is appropriate. Is there any way that that's gonna affect maybe more than one or two homes?
It's gonna make guys be more careful, but it's something that most of, even the volume builders are
Yeah, but
used
I
to
mean,
doing.
How many people are gonna have a notarized contract out there for sale that's gonna?
Oh,
come
you're
up
talking about the effective
us for
date
that?
issue. Rare.
Yeah,
You
so
know, and
we're
some,
probably not talking, at the most, maybe one, maybe two homes. So that's,
you're thinking the way
putting
I
that in or
was.
taking it out is not going to make a big deal
Is
one way or
it-
the other.
As unimportant as it was, there's a reason for, obviously it's so rare. No harm, no foul was kind of my thought.
All right.
It's not really gonna make a heck of a lot of difference. As long as we add something in there about notarized, we at least have some level of ability to verify and enforce it, administrate it, in some fair manner.
Yeah.
So,
Is there, doing the research and stuff, was there any consideration or any examples of like a maximum number?
I looked at, must have been, I don't know, 14 or 15 different model ordinances from across the country. Ours is one of the more stringent, but it's one of the more stringent that has been determined to be defensible. It has survived scrutiny. There are some that are just almost lip service to the issue. We went much further than that.
I didn't see that. Did we put that in ours at all?
Oh,
He's referring to a maximum amount of homes of the same type to be built in an area.
Yes.
well, that's what this is, and it gives you the standard. We're going to look adjacent across the street, and you go 4 lots, and you can't have any match that house, and that keeps going. You know, you move over 1 lot, then you go 4 more. You go across the street, you go 4 more.
This is more like an absolute number, like say 100 houses is the most that you can build in Lago Vista.
Oh, a cap, no. But my
is
point,
That's what I was looking at.
But-
If you had a home builder that owned 200 lots, there's still the
If they're
potential to
spread
have
out-
40 or 50
if they're
scattered
spread
around
out
town.
far enough, but the typical example is if you had a block that had 20 houses, okay, 20 lots in a row, the max you could have in there that were similar would be 4. And we define similar pretty stringently. You know, for it to be dissimilar, you've got to do, it's like a Chinese restaurant menu. You got to do 2 of these, 3 of these, and, you know, it's not just change the window, that sort of thing.
Well, it seems like so many of these homes, all they do is take the floor plan and flip it over.
Right, you can't do that here.
That,
You've got to do, there's 2 big categories. One of them you have to do 3 out of 4, and the other one you have to do 2 out of 4. So you gotta put some effort into it.
But if a builder bought 200 lots scattered all over Lago Vista far enough, he could build the same house 200 times.
In theory, if they're far enough apart, yeah.
Is there any way to limit that and to still stay legal?
I'm not sure it would survive scrutiny.
Okay.
You know, because if you're talking about appearance and you can't see them at the same time,
Okay.
it'd be hard to defend that as being anything other than arbitrary.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I'm looking at Dottie, of course,
Yes,
while I'm saying
yes.
that.
Your regulations have to have a rational basis to your legitimate public purpose, and if it was arbitrary, there's no rational basis.
Okay.
The houses were spread out so much where it didn't make an effect on the cookie cutter nature of the neighborhood, then you couldn't have like a cap regulation.
Okay.
All right, anything else? All right, thank you, Roy.
Thank you, Roy.
We'll move on to action item number 11. Discussion and consideration of resolution number 18-1755, a resolution granting the petition for annexation and authorizing staff to set dates, times, and place for public hearings on the proposed annexation of certain property owned by Silvertex Investments Limited, located at 4712 Loman Ford Road by the City of Lago Vista, Texas, and authorizing and directing the city secretary to publish notice of such public hearing.
Mayor, this item is exactly as you just presented. This is an annexation request by the property located at 4712 Loman Ford Road, and that property is owned by Silvertex Investments. There's a map that has been included in your packet for this request. You will see that property at the intersection of Loman Ford and Boggy. In addition, I just passed an annexation timetable with suggested dates. City attorney provided this to us earlier. This was just handed out. This will give you a guideline. These are not going to be, don't have to be the finalized set dates, but the good thing about this is when you're considering this action, one of the typical questions we get back is, if we move forward on this, what are the next steps? Dottie was so nice to provide you a list of next steps so that I don't have to tell you those, and then to give you a date with those steps as well. So in the future, we do hope that Dottie thinks about this for all other annexation requests and completes it prior to we getting here so that we have all the information. This is a first step in the process. It's a voluntary annexation. That is the annexation which we typically appreciate the most, because that means that the property owner sees the benefit of being inside the municipal limits, and that the staff says this is a good process for us to complete. Staff does recommend this, accepting this request letter and beginning the process.
Just a comment. I'd ask fellow council members to look at the dates and see if you have any conflicts with those dates, because we'll need at least 4. We'll need to quorum the meetings to do that, and that's, like July 4th. I don't know if people are gonna be gone, or a significant number of us are gonna be gone. So that was one of the things we had to consider last summer when we did the involuntary annexation, was making sure we had adequate counsel present to rule on some of these, like the first readings, for example. So I guess the other question I would ask is, if we go through this entire process, are we just bringing it into the city, or are we bringing it into the city and setting a zoning category on it?
Mayor, our goal is to, we do have other information that we will be presenting to the council. We would like to discuss the zoning as we get further into the annexation request.
Okay.
We do have that information prepared. We didn't send it out yet for this stage of the process, but we do have a couple options for how we will begin the process. One of the easy things to do is to, as Councilor Smith is stating, complete the annexation with the zoning change so that or zoning designation, so that that property doesn't have to go through a complete annexation and then be rezoned after that, and giving us 2 processes. We can bring those 2 items together through the process, similar to how the city has completed the process before, and staff will recommend using one process.
Josh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ron.
Does the person wanting to do this, do they know what they want to put there, or is this just simply annexation?
The applicant does have a proposed plan for what they want to do at the site.
Okay.
I believe yeah.
Oh.
I saw the outline of what's intended there, as far as the building is concerned.
I have a question more out of curiosity than anything else. I don't think there's much around here that's in the city limits of Lago Vista. What caused us to be contiguous? Is it the roads that are approximate to this property, or because these 2 parcels to the west are not in the city? We just talked about the Gross Close property, to the south, and they're not in the, I guess, Montechino, what do you call it? Catty corner.
Catty corner.
What is it that's allowing us to be contiguous with this property?
Mayor, Councilor, I do not know the exact property, which is why I'll talk until Roy gets here. I just know we've confirmed that.
It's actually, and it's kind of unique. The only 2 properties that are excluded are these 2 that are kind of what I call catty-cornered to each other. Most of the rest of the surrounding area is. It's kind of one of those weird areas where it kind of went out of its way. Now, the stuff immediately to the northwest of this property, for a couple of more lots, is still outside.
Right.
But you go a little further, and then the rest of that Rancho Cielo is in the city.
Rancho Cielo is not in the city.
Well, when you go far enough, it is.
Oh.
You gotta go all the way up to
You got,
Travis.
yeah.
Yeah.
Travis Lane. I guess is Boggy Ford in the city limits at that intersection?
Yes, sir.
It is.
And I'm assuming Loman is as well.
And I can show you the map. I mean, I can pull it up, but yeah, it's contiguous and
Okay. That was,
several
again,
boundaries.
more curiosity than anything else. I did have one question, that is, do we have water and wastewater lines going right by this property, so it's not gonna be very expensive for us to provide service there?
Mayor, Councilor, we do have service lines to these properties.
Okay.
Similar to what you're going to see with the Gross Close, we have service lines to the beginning of that property at that intersection. We're very well flush with systems at that intersection.
Perfect, okay, yeah,
The high school, I believe, pulls its water and sewer near that intersection.
got it. Very good.
Like I said.
And I'd have to
And
see
I
the
can
map, but
email
I
you a
think-
map that shows the ETJ lines around there.
Okay.
I thought
They're a little unusual.
I thought our city limits went down Loman a little ways past, just along the street, but a little ways past that intersection.
Yeah, and everything, on the other side of the road is in, and then you have some stuff, on the west that's in. I mean, it's almost like things have been excluded.
Yeah.
Well, that's because we wanted the county to pay for the Loman Ford Road as much as possible. That's
I
why.
understand.
Mayor, in the next step of this annexation request, we will provide that map so that we have that presented. If one person has the question, then there probably are a number of people that will have similar questions. And that's one of the checklist items, is to ensure that it is contiguous for annexation, and if not, to be able to explain that and what the process is for bringing them in.
And I guess the easy way to answer your question is if you annex the gross close tract that you just looked at, this one is inside of that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's, it almost, we were hoping maybe we would do them together, but it just didn't work out.
Okay.
Now, this resolution, as it's worded, this does nothing but start the process.
Right.
Yeah, it accepts the
So-
petitioners, I think.
That's
Any of the
correct.
details that would have to come forward
Oh, yeah, all that
about,
to be done.
all that would have to be determined later on, and would
We
be
are in
something that-
fact talking, about things that are going to be relevant after it's annexed, but that's just so they can be efficient.
For
and-
planning.
Right. Nothing, there's a limit on what we'll do before the annexation process is started.
And the schedule timeline is just provided as the quickest you could annex this property. So it's up to staff as far as to time it, working with the city manager. The July 5th date is not a date that is a published public hearing date, so that can be moved further out. But once you advertise for your public hearings, you want to have them after the 20th, before the 40th. So your public hearings have to be advertised. You have to give notice to your utilities and public entities. And so the front end of the timeline, once you kick it off, you need to stay in there. But to adopt the ordinance, that is flexible.
So do we need a motion?
Is that part of the motion language?
The
Or-
resolution just gives the authority to staff to start the annexation process and to develop a
So that
schedule,
can come
working
later.
with the city manager.
All right.
And this was just provided as an example of the quickest, if that was council's desire, to immediately start it.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt resolution number 18-1755, a resolution granting the petition for annexation and authorizing staff to set dates, times, and place for public hearings on the proposed annexation of certain property owned by Silvertex Investments Limited, located at 4712 Loman Ford Road by the city of Lago Vista, Texas, and authorizing and directing the city secretary to publish notice of such public hearing.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. Right. Agenda item number 12, discussion item, city manager's report, Lago Vista Golf Course quarterly financial report.
Mayor, as presented in your agenda, this is also a new section to our agenda. It has been labeled as city manager reports. One of the items that we've had come up with council is request for reports. We're looking at these in a couple different ways. When council requests reports, we send those reports out directly to you via email. However, it has been brought to our attention that there may be questions about some of those reports that we want to discuss in public. If we send out an email to council, for those that aren't aware, the council doesn't respond back to that email back and forth to one another. And so there may be questions that council would like to have in an open session. In the last meeting, we had a request for a Lago Fest report and the golf course quarterly financial report. Although the request was to send out these reports electronically, I still want to show you with this section, this is an area where we can use this to present information every meeting that we may have during an additional section. So our goal is to try and have some sections on our agenda that allow us to present information that may not otherwise have an action item that should be addressed. For this meeting, as you can see, we had subsection A, which is the golf course financial report. As I already stated, the golf course second quarter report was emailed out to council. However, we will make a general statement on this report so that people listening can see those numbers. These numbers can be presented online as we present all of our financial information on the city website. We had a first quarter report after the first quarter. The second quarter report shows the total revenues for the golf course at $146,983.68. The total expenses for that same quarter are $278,158.47. The overall net loss for that period, $131,174.79. That is the quarterly financial report for the Lago Vista Golf Course for the second quarter.
Well, I guess my comment would be is, sometimes I go to the website if I need to get information, and maybe citizens do too, and if we don't have it in a data package like this, then it doesn't show up anywhere for extended periods of time. And so I think we need at least put the financials at least in here quarterly, just so that the citizens can see it. At least if it comes out to us individually, then the citizens are blind on that. And I would think that we'd want to be transparent on that and at least put it in here quarterly, if nothing else. So I didn't see it in here. I did get the individual email, but now when I go back, say a year from now I have to not only look for a data package, then I have to go find the report that goes with it and make that association. And it'd be nice if it was just all bundled in a report where I go to one place and get it all. And it used to be that way, but somehow we've deviated from that. I'd like to get it back to that way if we could. So I guess that's my comment.
Mayor, Councilor, is that a request for the city's entire financial report and then a quarterly report of our overall financial status?
We used to get financials. It was on a delay because of the accruals, but we used to get them every quarter in the data package. We used to get them for years, and then for some reason it changed. And I don't know if it changed before you got here or after you got here, but we used to get those. And that was nice because sometimes, it's nice getting weeklies because you can actually kind of see some of the dynamics of the growth hitting, and if there's a problem, you can alert people to it. But some of these are kind of standard quarterly numbers that you just want to look at trends and see how we're doing, on a trend line basis, more so than even a quarterly basis, to see how we're doing year over year or over multiple years, because there's a seasonality to some of the stuff that we do. And you can't see that if you get too micro with some of the reports. So I guess I'd like to see all the reports bundled up at least once a month, and then the financials come out on a delay, but they generally show up by the second meeting of the end of the quarter, following the end of the quarter. Typically we see that because he's got to do the accrual process.
Mayor, what our plan is as staff is to use the website to post financial reports every month. And that would be a full financial report for the entire city. And then you can access every single month as the financial report is reported on there. And then if individuals want to have a true line graph or a trend, then you have individual months that you can trend. We're not planning on printing quarterly financial reports if we have the monthly report. The monthly just allows people to go ahead and pull that information as requested. But we can easily I don't know how that's any different.
I just think we need to have a consistent data point on some frequency that we can count on over time.
Isn't monthly gonna be consistent data point?
Well, that has been. It
And
has been.
that's our goal. That's what I'm saying, is our goal is to put all this onto the website, as we said, because we're saying we want that website, which was updated, to be to the point and updated so that all of our information's on there. It seems redundant to post it on the website, then put it into a council packet. And there's two things, because we have a lot of people that don't tend to go to our council packets for information that we've already talked to individuals about. We just had a large number of citizens say, can you get this on the website? So we're gonna put it all on the website.
Yeah, I think my only comment would be, if we have an agenda item, and there's material that supports that, it ought to be in the packet. That way you can see the agenda and you can see the supporting material all in one form.
And Mayor, what I did on this item, is I've done on others, I put it out there and I said, council, do you wanna have this emailed to you? Or do we wanna have it put on the agenda and do we wanna discuss it? And the majority response that I had said, just email it to me, no discussion. However, I put it on here for this section, so I knew it was an important topic to say, here you go. The majority said, you send it out, because that's what we requested, is to have the financial information, as Councilor Smith's saying, give us the information, then if we have any questions based on that, then we can get that back. I just want to clarify, is all my point in the questions were, do we want to send out the entire financial report, or do we want individual reports for golf course, PD, library? That's the only question. And our plan, staff-wise, was to present the entire financial report every month, post that online.
Do you know what part of the website that's supposed to do? We're not doing that yet, is that correct?
We have it lined out. We just haven't transferred the information onto it. It's going to go under the finance department.
Okay.
And so the entire budget will have the same line item, which the budget's pulled up. And then every month financial report is supposed to be presented on there. As Councilor Smith had said, reconciliation is an important part. And so part of that discussion has been, do you wait a full month to make sure that we've reconciled? Or do you just present what you have and you use that number as it's presented as the monthly financial report? You'll see that when we send out the financial reports, if the questions come up, are we reconciling every month? Then we want to be consistent. We want to reconcile before we post. The problem will be the delay of waiting potentially 3 weeks for all POs to clear and posting.
I think the comment I would make is it, and it's, I don't think it's on the website yet. It sounds like you guys have planned out where you're going to put it and so forth, but it's not there yet. But we've removed that information from the packet. So as for the last whatever months and until it's on here, the citizens won't have any access to that information. So the only thing I'd suggest is until it is available on the website, maybe you continue including it in the packets. And then once it's available in a designated spot on the website, maybe it's no big thing. But as long as there's an agenda item, I think any supporting material should be in the packet. And I guess I would go back, you mentioned you sent out an email and you got responses and so forth. This was part of the budget ordinance that we passed, that these quarterly reviews of the golf course financial information are required. And I think they're required to be on the council's agenda, not just send out a report and we're all fat, dumb, and happy. So I don't think you can just ask people for their opinion and go with what they say. I think you have to follow what the ordinance was that was passed, which said that we'll have quarterly agenda items where we discuss this in a public forum.
Mayor, if you'll look on the screen, Dave Street has pulled up the document section on the new website. And then under that section, you'll see finance at the top. And then the second one, you're going to see budgets. The third, which is great, shows the audits. And then the fourth shows monthly financials. The one financial report you see on that immediately underneath is February of 2018, showing that the reconciliation that has occurred
In December.
goes back to, for February 2018.
Yeah, that was when it was created, but you probably got the accruals from January into that number, probably. So that's probably an end of January report. And I'm okay with waiting for the accruals to take place, because otherwise you're getting an incomplete picture.
Is that something we can get to today, or is that?
Yeah, that's up there now, Mayor. That's
Where's the
already
document
posted
section?
onto.
Where can I find?
So when you go back, you'll see on the home page, There's 4 tabs right underneath the picture. The second tab is going to say Document Center. So you'll see by clicking Document Center.
Got it. Perfect, thanks.
And then it's going to bring you to those portals there. The second one's called Finance. And you can just do the search tab if you want to go faster. But as we said, under Finance, then the third one's going to say Monthly Financials. So these items are presented onto there. Mayor, I will review the budget document for the wording to make sure that we're carrying out the request of the actual budget document.
Yes, because last FY, we did dollar amounts, trigger amounts set by dollars, and they were getting missed and hit, and we were falling behind. This year, when we did it, it was set up to be quarterly. So we didn't necessarily have triggers that we had to try and watch for and miss and stuff like that. It was designated to be quarterly, so there was no question when it would be coming.
So Josh,
No, go ahead.
in this format, where would this report have gone? Would it have been underneath finance, the golf course quarterly financials or whatever, and it would have been under the finance section in documents?
If it's a golf course quarterly financial report, that would be posted on the website. What we're posting on the website is the entire city financial report, which all goes under finance. Yes.
I get that, but what you emailed to us, I'm assuming that would be posted at some point once this is all fleshed out. Would it be in the finance section where you would post that?
Everything, yes, sir. Everything would be
Okay.
under the finance.
Okay.
So this just comes down to presentation, it seems to me, whether it's presented to us, either quarterly or monthly.
Well, I didn't even know this was out here. So
I
this
didn't
is
either.
new information, that's all.
I didn't either.
Well, and my main concern, I think Ron had the same one, is citizens who've gotten used to how you go look for information, and it's been in the packet for the most part. But if the information's not in the packet, how do they get it? And I think we just need to do a job of marketing
Educating,
and teaching people where to find stuff,
Mayor, this is
including council members.
This is one of the beautiful things that we talked about when we actually made that presentation about rolling out the new website. We wanted the website to have easily manageable, surfable website that's user-friendly and provides all the information. If you recall, one of the comments is that Dave and a team had to go back and pull all of the information off the old site, and that took a lot of time, and then try and transpose that over. So one of the challenges was, what do we take from the old site and add to the new site to not bog it down? It doesn't matter. We've pulled a ton of information onto the new site and makes it very heavy or makes it very loaded. The good thing is that's all surfable. It's all manageable, searchable, so that you can pull up that information. But then to go back to Councilor Sutherland's question, where do you find it? We always want to have it under, if it's a financial information or a report, we want to have it under financial. That's the whole goal. If it's an ordinance, we want to have it just under ordinances. So as we said, when we rolled this new website out, when that report was provided to the council, the challenge is we're trying to tell people, use the website to find out information on the city. That way, as Councilor Smith said, you're not having to go back and look at specific agendas. You're going back and you're finding the information you want by using the website instead of going back and pulling up 20 different agendas looking for a searchable word. And that's part of what the council said when you said, we're going to do a new website. So that was part of that challenge. How do we streamline it so it's easier to navigate? So we just got to have to get our presentation down by staff. One of the struggles we've had is the staff person that would be doing the updates for the website is also the staff person that's working on Lago Fest. So that magic date just happens to be May 5th. And then we get back into the normal scheme of things of planning for the next Lago Fest.
So I have a question. So in the future, if we're going to have this information available, will it be archived so that in future years we can look at trends and that sort of thing? So,
Yes, sir.
So I think that goes to the question that Councilor Smith had about being able to go back and find that kind of information.
Archivable and searchable. Yes, sir.
Good.
Just a comment, I did use while y'all were talking, I did go out and just look at golf underneath the documents, and it works pretty good until I get to the actual revenue and expense report, and it doesn't go into the actual report. It kind of stops there. So there's some preamble stuff that's in here that's golf related, that's in the Word document text, but then when you drop into I guess it's this report that I see, which is financials, the fine command doesn't go into the report, so I can't get to the expenses, for example. I can't see any of the revenue or expenses when I do that. So when I do a search here, I can do fines on these things, and it's pulling up word golf, for example. I can see it here on the fund page, the summary page that we get. And then as I start doing next, looking for golf, it works fine on these, and I get the first one here, but well, there it goes. And now it jumped out. So I'm not getting all the way through the reports, the financials that are attached. Now, I don't know if that's a technical thing or if that's the format that's being used. I'm not really sure what the technical reason is for it, but it's getting into it partially, but not getting all the way through it. Because the first thing I do is I go look at the lower right-hand corner, which is basically the net income. I look at the, are you making money, you're losing money kind of thing. I drop right straight to that number to see what it is, and it's not getting all the way down to the end. So that looks like a technical thing that needs to be looked at. That's all I'm gonna say. It looks like it's off to a good start, though.
And Mayor, clarifying that, just so Dave's aware, all those documents are there. Counselor Smith's using the searchable function so that instead of scrolling through the document, going to a place, you just keep pushing next as in a word find that would take you to the next word that would say golf, library, police, and you keep going down those stages. So I think it is definitely outside of my knowledge of how to handle a search engine, but information there.
Looks like that may be a scanned document, so.
Well, if it's a picture, then I can't do that.
Yeah.
If it's text or numerics, I can, but I can't search inside of the image, a photograph, for example. Okay.
Josh, the projections for Q3 and Q4, will they include the revenue and expenses associated with the whole signs that you and I have talked about?
Yes, sir.
So those numbers do include the projections for that?
Yes, sir.
And then how about this? Is it the same for, I'm assuming our projection is that the clubhouse will be reopened hopefully by the fourth quarter, the July, August, September timeframe. I'm assuming it takes that into account that will be back open and potentially have revenue and expenses associated with that.
Mayor, Councilor, the projections would include fourth quarter, not the entire fourth quarter, based on a 90-day contract for what we're doing in terms of any renovations and work, contract work, and then opening back up. What we've done for quarter three is remove the expenditures associated with the clubhouse operation, which on the restaurant side, and we've tried to alter the revenues accordingly based on the revenue reports that you're receiving now in terms of food and beverage. For the fourth quarter, we've been extremely conservative and hardly used any numbers for increased food, beverage, and we haven't included any increase in mixed beverage permitting, which we project there will be some increase if the facility's open, but not knowing how that operation will happen, hardly any projection, and by that I mean less than 1% increase.
Okay.
On that.
The other thing I noticed is that in Q3, Q4, for the past several years, they're generally better than Q1, Q2. Yet we're projecting only about 11,000 more for Q3, Q4 versus Q1, Q2. Is that again just being uber conservative, or is that what you truly anticipate will happen? I'm seeing dramatically better conditions, fairways, tee boxes, greens are coming around. So my thought process is hopefully we're going to have better traffic to the golf course than what we've seen in the last year.
Mayor, Councilor, I wholeheartedly hope that your thoughts are spot on.
Yeah.
But it's past Uber. I am ridiculously conservative on projections. And so for me, as you'll see with the budget, the best case scenario is to say that if you're going to maintain the status quo of where you're at now, anything you've received previously, you project that for the next month if there's no reason to show lower. Even going up for Q3 from Q2 was a big move for me to look at that and say, yes, we predict higher, and that's in conversations with Chris and with Star and Nicole, and that was drastic. My numbers originally would have kept Q3 the same as Q2, The expenditure line item, we want to be a little more liberal. And so we look at the projections from previous years for those years, and we see that there's an increased sum. You'll see some of those lines fluctuating as more expenditures. Our expenditures aren't laid out for Q3 to go up. However, if we see projections showing that we have spent more in those months, basically that being a difference in how the encumbrances happen versus the actual expenditures on fertilizer and treatment patterns for third quarter, then I'm going to take the expenditures higher, but I'm trying not to put the revenues higher, even seeing that there are some improvements. Again, going back to the community, I think the one thing that we can't measure is the traffic at the course and the personalities at the course. I can't project how a Kevin Sullivan will change his play pattern, which is why I projected very conservative.
Okay. Another question I had was, if you take your projections plus our actuals from Q1, Q2, it looks like our expenses are going to come out to be 215,000 less than the budget. And so my question is, I mean, I'm loving that from a financial perspective, but is Chris getting everything he needs, staying, less than what we budgeted? I guess is my question.
Mayor and Councilor, and if we want to ask Chris directly, he can get to there while I give you the quick answer. There's not been an item that Chris has requested within the budget that has been denied in the time that I've been here.
Okay, so he's getting what he needs.
Yes.
Okay.
That projection is with receiving everything that we've asked for.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure, because that's a pretty big number, 200,000 less than what was budgeted. So I just wanted to make sure that you still were getting what you needed.
Yes, sir.
Cool, okay. And then I just had one last question, and that is, the last meeting we had, we voted on the renovation to the clubhouse. In the interim, we found out you can't use the bond money for certain things other than the structural and electrical. Can you give us maybe a precursor? I think this is going to be on our next meeting, but this is pertinent to the projection you've done. Is the idea that we're going to end up taking the money out of operational budget for the golf course? And if so, is that taken into account in the projections that you provided?
Mayor, Councilor, great question. Actually, Dottie conversed back with our bond counsel, which was the right way to handle this. We received the update from, and Bart Fowler being our bond counsel representative that we used, expressed those concerns. We worked with Bart to define the items that fit within the bond. And the goal is, since we have provided the notice to proceed with the comment to the contractor, we want to begin the process and the demolition process. That gets us back to Councilor Smith's point of, we open it up, we see what it is, but we restrict our funding mechanisms to the items only on the bond. And if there are items on the outside, which as Councilor Sullivan pointed out, we will bring that back on the May 17th meeting. We will present options to the council. We don't just have one plan. One plan would be, as you alluded to, potentially there's $200,000 that could potentially be savings. Again, my conservative nature says we don't really want to touch that, but it's an option that council has because you've already allocated those dollars. There are a couple other options that bond counsel has provided us with that say we need to look at these items specifically. One item that we cannot define as structural would be a bar construction. Although it says the word structure in it, you can't really define that as within what you were trying to do, the intent of the bond. So we will present, we have a plan for 3 options for the May 17th meeting, basically because we've already discussed this before to bring to council. I think your point is spot on with using the current allocation, but I think there's other flexibility, and then there's that whole point of when we get a solid number, then we may bring it back to council again in June, which we don't want to do, but if there's a solid number and a definite construction that we need to bring back to council, we want to make sure we get the intent of what council did in the last action with this project. I don't want to miss the intent with staff interpretation is my point.
Sure. And just to clarify, so that from what I heard from you, it sounds like the numbers are not included in the projections.
I gave you the Roy answer. How'd I do that? Yes. The answer to your question is those numbers are not in those projections.
Perfect. Okay.
Until after council does something differently than what the direction is now.
Got it. Thank you.
Anything else on the manager reports?
And Mayor, one final comment on this section. We want to use this section for just these items so that, again, when we look at future meeting dates, council has this request, we put it here, and we'll note the comments of the counselors in terms of adding information here. And then we can use this for some other updates that we might need in the future.
Thank you. All right. Discussion item number 13, discussion regarding safe routes to school.
Mayor, let me start this item. This is not a new item that the council has never seen before. I do believe this council has seen this item twice already and taken some action on this, and took action one time when we decided to retake an action. It may actually be time number 4. What's being presented in front of you today is the actual bid award to begin the project, the Safe Routes to School project. This is a very exciting process. We, as you remember before, we had some concerns with the number of bids that come in and then the amount of dollars that were awarded, or the amount of dollars that would have been expended to award the project. This time, Cobb Finley, and Julie Hastings is here for Cobb Finley. You've seen her a number of times, and you will see her more times throughout the project. She's here to speak for Cobb Finley. They tabulated and reviewed the bids. We did receive 7 bids. As you will note in your packet, the low bid amount, which has been reviewed and Cobb Finley has given their blessing on, was $554,224.70. The engineer's estimate originally was $620,000. You will also note from Eric Belay's staff summary that the city has $211,566.64 remaining in that line item for construction. In addition, we have the award of $404,671. Outside of those numbers, Eric Belay has pointed out that there are approximately $60,000 in additional items that would need to be included in that proposed budget with that award. The item in front of you is simply the review and award of the contract to Austin Underground Incorporated.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to say I'm very pleased that we have come up with a number that is less than what was originally projected. From the 620,000 down to the 554 is quite a drop. I looked through here. This is, again, one of those things where the city has benefited from having our own engineer and someone that's looking at this from the city's viewpoint. I don't know how much discussion everybody else is interested in, but after looking at this, I'm definitely ready to make a motion on this that we approve it.
I just need a little bit of clarification. So we're looking at 554 and 60. So actually 614.
Yes, sir.
And we have about 615 or 616.
615, 616. We have a couple $1,000 left leeway, Mayor.
Do we have contingency in those numbers?
Yes, sir.
How much?
Typically 10% is what's going to be in there. I can't say specifically.
That's fine.
But I'm going to say
close.
plus or minus 10%.
So we're close to the budget, but we haven't exceeded it. The way I read that?
Yes, sir.
And these are considerably lower numbers than what we got on the first bids, aren't they not?
Mayor, you'll see the bid range is actually pretty intense. The low bid being the 554, the high bid is actually 710. But as we said before, it doesn't matter how good we are, if the bids we get are high, then they are what they are, sadly. So that range of $150,000 difference is significant. If we only had those 2 bids, from a staff's perspective, we would have concern. We would have concern about the high bid, we'd have concern about the low bid, and pretty much we'd sit there and go, hey, let's just hope it's gonna work out and pray that there are not a lot of change orders that come in. On the flip side, however, you have 3 bids in between, 4 bids actually, in between those numbers. And so that's a positive sign. The next lowest bid was at 609,000, and that gives us the hope that the estimate and the bid that we have is something that we can work with.
How would this contract work if the contractor comes in and does it and they find things are more expensive? Would they come back and ask for a change request? Is that how, and so we'd have to approve?
Mayor, we definitely still have the potential for any change orders to come in from the contractor.
Okay.
And first, anytime those change orders come in, as we've said before in the projects that we've looked at, staff will negotiate those items first, and they'll be reviewed by either our city engineer or our contract engineer. So either Eric or Julie will be reviewing those items before they come in to see if they're valid before they would come back to the council.
Let me ask this. So with the clubhouse, for example, we're not sure what we know is we're gonna find in that building. In the case of these sidewalks and so forth, I mean, they know what they're getting into. What would there be changes that we would ask for, or would they find conditions that they hadn't expected that would potentially cause overages? What?
Mayor, this is an easy one in terms of anytime you're building a street or a structure like a street, there's a big room for rock, for clay, for compaction. There's a lot of issues there that could come back to us. That's why when the engineer receives this, they review it to say, did the bidder put sufficient in each line item so that they can handle these things? We go out, we do preliminary analysis on the, let's just call it the foundation, the substructure, so that we know, is it a high clay, is it a high rock area? Do we have a water issue? Subsurface water could cause that problem. Now, on the flip side for the city, where you're saying, could we come back and say it? Potentially in construction, if we're field engineering some areas, we may have a concern that we want to go and add that railing, as we talked before. Maybe there's an area that we see that could actually use a railing because of the, let's call it the drop-off. Forgetting the good technical word here. But let's just say the decline of the road or the decline of the hill next to there, we may want to put that in. There may be some areas that require additional space on a sidewalk. Typically, you don't want to change the width of a sidewalk, but there may be something that comes back on our side. I would say for the contractor side, it's really what's below the ground. For our side, it's more or less what's above the ground than any changes that we would make. But with this budget, I feel very confident that we have everything in there. And so we're really excited about the work that both Eric and Julie have done to get us to this point, because before we were talking about what are we taking out to still get this project started. So I think it's a monumental project for our community, not just because it's basically one of the first sidewalks that we'll see here, but it's a really big project and we want to see it done correctly. So the oversight's going to have to be there. That's part of that $60,000 number too that Mr. Belay has added to his staff summary, so that we ensure we're watching it, as you're saying, to be there, eyes on the project. Again, that's the long answer.
Just one last question. It says it's contingent on TxDOT approval. Has anybody contacted TxDOT to see if this is going to fly or not if we approve it? Or are we just going to approve it and it goes to TxDOT and gets rejected?
Mayor, Council, what happens in these processes for the TxDOT project, you can see this in any DOT project. You give the approval, then you send it there for their final approval. Yes, we have had discussions with them. Both Julie and Eric have been in conversation with the district office. We presented this project to them. Actually, a number of us have gone to talk to local office about the project. We feel confident with it. I believe they'll feel pretty confident in it. If you recall the last time when it went to TxDOT, that's where there was an issue in the process. We've made sure to handle the process sufficiently and correctly, and then the numbers within the guidelines that they're going to want to see as well.
So you feel reasonably certain they're going to approve it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Point of order. I have this on my agenda as a discussion item.
I think it says discussion and action.
Discussion and action.
In the packet, it says discussion and action,
But not on
but on
this.
my agenda, it's discussion only.
Discussion only.
And this is a bid. You have the opportunity to reject all bids if the council so chooses. And from what I've heard is the council's interested in accepting the engineer's recommendation. And I think you would move this forward as part of your discussion item, because you will have to bring it back with your contract documents. You'll have to take it to the, staff will have to take it through the TxDOT office. So you'll see this again. So it would, the discussion is the engineer's recommendation sufficient? And it will be brought back in the process. You can take a formal action by motion just to direct staff to
Okay.
start the process with
I
TxDOT.
just wanted to make sure that we are legally allowed to take action, since it was on the agenda as a discussion.
It would have been better to say discussion and consideration, or to put it under the action item.
Right.
But the backup indicates that the engineer has made the recommendation, and if council so chooses, if you make a motion to authorize staff to take the low bid and put it forward in the process, it will come back again. So
Thank you.
I think you can make that motion to accept the engineer's recommendation for the low bidder and authorize staff to start the process.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we accept the engineer's recommendation and move forward with awarding the contract to Austin Underground and moving forward with submitting it to TxDOT for approval.
I'll second.
All right, I have a second, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. Future meetings. Schedule, consider the schedule and items for future council meetings.
Are we gonna put this annexation timeline on future agenda items? Because I think you probably need to pre-build your agenda with this annexation in mind. So, I guess that's having this annexation timeline, is that your goal, to make sure that all those get placed on future agendas without us doing it every time?
Yes, sir. So our challenge will be, we'll follow back up with the applicant, and then we will present that information back. We will solidify those dates. I would say, at this point, maybe premature to base the future council meetings, but at the next meeting, we'll solidify the dates and give you what our recommendation is based on the advertising, similar to how our city attorney has presented that now.
Well, the reason why I ask is because item number 2 says city mails notice of public hearings to property owners May 7th. Okay, so I assume y'all are gonna take action by May 7th on item number 2, and then at some point, it's gonna come back to us.
Didn't come back to us until June.
Until June, yeah, which is when we have hearing number 1. Or we're gonna look at the service draft plan, the draft service plan. So I guess we're trusting you to make sure these get put on all those meetings that we have action on.
Yes, sir.
We don't have to, every meeting, go back to this thing and re-add it. Okay.
Trust in him.
Hmm?
And we're trusting him and our secretary, Robin.
Okay. Just wanna,
I think we should send it on to Robin since she's here.
Robin's not paying
She's
any
not even
attention.
she's not even listening.
and then I guess we'll hear the, what was the other one we're gonna hear back on?
The anti-monotony one.
Yeah, right, the Roy one, number 10. That's gonna come back at us. Okay.
And staff can adjust this 2 weeks, if, as they look at this schedule and think that it's too much to try to get these notices out on this timeline, you just shift it 2 weeks it's kind of built in that process. But once you kick it off with sending the notice to the property owners, 30 days before the first public hearing, you need to stay on the publication schedule.
Right, right. Yeah, once you tip that first domino, they're all
Yeah.
gonna go.
So we need to gather our applications and appoint our youth advisory committee. Because if we don't, they'll be out of school.
Well, is anybody gonna show up? If they're out of school?
We'll adjust there, but we at least gotta get them appointed. Anybody else? Okay. So we will move into our executive session. We will convene into executive session pursuant to sections 551.071, advice of counsel, 551.072, real property, 551.074, personnel, Texas Government Code, and section 1.05, Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct regarding A, pending or threatened litigation pertaining to cause number D-1-GN-16-16-002483, Villa Montechino LP versus City of Lago Vista, Travis County 200th District Court. B, consultation with legal counsel concerning possible real estate acquisition, management, or divestiture and attendant matters thereto. C, consultation with legal counsel concerning airport property. D, consultation with legal counsel regarding contractual claims or possible claims or charges, contractual modifications, and questions related thereto. E, consult with legal counsel regarding standards and criteria for city managers' performance evaluation. We're going to executive session at 8:55. And I'm not happy that somebody changes everything from consultation to E, they just put consult and mess up my rhythm.
They're just messing with you.
I know. Change one word, then I repeat 10 times, then they change it.